What's up, Sushi Squad? We back in some more Trove. And today is both a momentous occasion because it's exciting. You've probably already seen the title of the video. However, it's also a terrible day because we've got some serious criticisms to talk about, and hopefully this ends up being brought to light with the devs because this is bad. It's really bad. So we're on the test server right now, which means that you guys can test this all out for yourselves. And of course, we're going to end up having multiple videos that are going to be talking about each of the details of this new update. But today we're going to be focusing specifically on Paragon levels. That's right. Trove is adding Paragon levels. Now, what are Paragon levels? Well, in every other game in existence, a Paragon level is you get your character to max level, and then you can continuously get XP, and instead of getting a character level, you'll get a Paragon level. And then the Paragon points in every other game can end up being spent onto other additional effects to your character, whether it just be like minor stat increase or whatever, right? Trove, honestly, shouldn't even call it Paragon levels because it's not what it is. The way that Trove handles it, which I personally am really detesting, but this is not the big criticism that we're going to be talking about today, is that Paragon levels in Trove basically are another form of mastery. It just is going to end up ultimately giving you a new currency that is then spent to get other items that are going to end up being additional in the game. So, I mean, some of this stuff is really cool and kind of exciting, but you'll see as we talk a little bit further in the video about why it's just such a problem in the way that they're implementing this. But in short, what a Paragon level is going to end up doing is going to end up giving you Paragon loops or Paragon prime loops. Now, these are going to end up being items that you get. You'll get a Paragon loop for every Paragon level. So you can see, even though I'm level 30, in the top left, I actually have my Paragon level, and I'm at Paragon level 1. So how do you get a prime Paragon loop? By dealing with prime numbers. What's a prime number? Well, it sure as heck isn't what it should be, because a prime number is not every 5 levels or every 10 level. A prime number is, well, it's something completely different. Well, actually, let me actually just look at an image right here. Prime numbers are basically levels 2, 3, 5, 7, 11, 13, 17, 19, 23, 29, so on and so forth. It gets worse and worse and worse, the divide between a full prime Paragon level and further and further. And then the point is that these Paragon levels can go up to Paragon level 1000, and then after level 1000, they basically reset to level 1 again. Now, the reason why this is such a problem is because it basically means that getting this prime Paragon loot, or just Paragon loops in general, is going to perpetually get harder and harder to do, which basically means that the more Paragon levels you have, the more you're actually punished for continuously grinding it, because what Paragon levels are used for is down here with this idiot. Now, Paragon levels are going to not only be used at this new merchant so that you can get a new type of, well, there's basically going to be a new type of pinata that you'll be able to get one of these pinatas per prime Paragon level, or you can spend real life money, which these are extremely overpriced. They give you garbage loot, absolute trash. The drop rates on them are terrible, as people have already tested out, because basically what you can do on the test server is you can end up loading into the test server. You'll get a bunch of these pinatas in your inventory. They are tradable, so you can throw them into your club chest, and then you can go back to the live server, re-export your character, and do this over and over and over again to end up getting hundreds, if not thousands, of these Paragon pinatas. And people have dropped like maybe 500 of them, if not more, and have barely gotten some of the rarest loot out of them. So the point is that this I strongly disagree with. This is one big negative point for the devs, because what they're basically doing is they're basically trying to make these pinatas seem like they're valuable so that they can justify the expensive purchase of them, despite the fact that their value in terms of what they actually deliver to you for the game is useless. They're the exact same as every other pinata. They just give you some stupid mounts and stupid wings that don't end up actually helping you out in any way, shape, or form. It just gives you a little bit of mastery. Who cares? So anyways, moving on, there's also the Paragon Workbench. Now, this is also going to end up requiring Trovian Loop, which, again, you get these per Paragon level, but then there's also going to end up being a bunch of allies and mounts, and these will actually cost other resources. So Paragon's Mark, which is very rarely obtained from Prime Paragon Pinatas. See where this loophole is going? Already it's sounding really, really bad because they're trying to add value to all of this stuff so that they can push more sales with these pinatas, because otherwise you can grind them, but it's really ridiculous how you end up grinding them. So you can get a Prime Paragon Workbench that you can throw down, a ring polisher, which we'll get into that in a bit, but there's also the strongest allies in the game. So these not only end up giving you lots and lots of light, but they also have some insane substats to them. Some of them being very, very broken, because you'll notice this guy right here, gain a protective shield when a nearby enemy dies. However, there is only a version of this ally that gives you physical damage boosts. There's no magic version of it, which I can understand that the devs in their minds somehow think that, okay, a physical character is going to be up close and personal, so that stands to be the character that needs to get the shield more. However, the devs don't seem to actually realize that that is not how Trove is. That might be what they think that Trove is, but it's not, because even if you're a ranged character, enemies literally just beeline straight towards you. So having a shield as a ranged character is just as important as having it as a physical character. So what I would like to see is alternate variants of this, where either there's going to end up being two allies, one that gives physical, one that gives magic, or better yet, just make it so that this ally gives physical and magic damage, because then it means that you can end up just getting it once, and then all classes can benefit from it. There's a couple other ones here. So gain movement speed boost when a nearby enemy dies. This is the magic damage one. This one, chance to reduce ability cooldown when a nearby enemy dies, also gives movement speed. And then check this out. Not that one, sorry. This one right here. So this one's got, has a chance to recover one flash charge when a nearby enemy dies, and also a chance when a nearby enemy dies to gain a large damage and movement speed boost. Which, kind of interesting that they have like a new ability. However, you can see that it doesn't really increase your damage, so I don't know how useful that's going to be. And then, of course, there's mounts and wings and so on and so forth, which are ridiculously expensive. But once again, something that the game is acting like is valuable. But here's the thing, is just because it's new doesn't mean that it ends up equating to value. And that's kind of our prime argument here in terms of Trove's development cycle and how they keep developing new content, because this is a cycle that I've experienced over years and years and years of playing this game, is that they always end up copping out and doing the laziest possible method of introducing new content, because it's just cosmetic wings and they probably suck. Let's be honest here. Like the Shadow Hunter Wolf Hunter costume that we get out of the most recent event, the devs ended up making it extremely difficult to get it, and so it's extremely expensive for players to sell it on the market. But is it worth it? No, it's one of the worst costumes in the entire game, just as I expect all of these items are probably going to be the most disgusting items in the game. But that is besides the point, okay? Because all of this gets swept under the rug, because new content, okay, whatever. I can grind infinite levels just passively while I'm out doing dungeons and stuff. Sure. It'll give me more mounts, whatever, more mounts, more wings, whatever, new allies. Okay, cool, whatever, give or take. The big problem is that this update is also finally introducing what the devs said they would never do. They've said this multiple times. This is an inside joke within the Trove community, because the devs constantly say, oh, we'll never add Crystal 4 gear. We'll never add Crystal 5 gear. We'll never add crystal rings to the game. Yes, that's right. Crystal rings are now in the game. And here's the thing, okay? So this, cool. Okay, whatever. I don't care about the fact that the devs keep going back on their word about new end game content, right? Because I don't really care. If they give us something else to grind, that's fine. However, what these cost is primal loops with the specific class, because as I mentioned before, you have to get a prime number Paragon level. But here's the thing. Here's the catch. You got to do it with the specific class in order to end up getting a primal loot for that class, which means that in order for me to end up crafting a Candy Barbarian signature box in order to get the crystal ring that specifically is going to be used on the Candy Barb, I basically have to grind with the Candy Barb. So in that regard, it's kind of cool, because it means that, okay, you're gonna basically be rewarded for the more the more you end up using your favorite classes, you can potentially end up grinding more prime Paragon loot and blah 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 blah. By the way, that is actually one of the mounts right there. Disgusting, not worth it at all, but there you go. Cool. So anyways, the point that I'm trying to make out of all of this is basically you end up getting this ring box. Okay, but it's a ring box, which means it's random because the crystal rings can go from crystal 1 to crystal 4. And some people have apparently forged like hundreds of these and have never gotten a crystal 4, which means it's RNG on RNG on RNG, because on top of all of that, you also need to be grinding out your prime class in order to get the prime levels, which, you know, okay, it's, as much as I'm being overly critical about it, it's not really that bad so far, right? Because you'll end up getting, you know, these augmented abilities. However, here's the problem. Here's where things start going seriously downhill. So let's just say theoretically you end up grinding up and you end up getting the box that you want, right? So what these crystal rings will do is basically you could craft a crystal ring for the knight. You could still use it on the candy barb, but you wouldn't end up getting the hidden abilities or the modified abilities. You remember over the past PTS or public test servers of Trove, we've had these modified abilities that we've been able to test out, and they were associated to rings that they ended up specifically giving us. Well, that's what these are. So these give us the modified abilities to each of the classes. But here's the thing. So these rings will end up having a total of 3 hidden abilities that they can choose from, but they will only end up having 2 hidden abilities on the ring at a time. And you're going to have to use the ring polisher to end up choosing one of those augmented abilities. So basically you would end up polishing your ring so that you could then end up getting one of the 2 different abilities that the ring had, or you could randomize one of the other stats so that you could potentially end up getting the other ability. So basically you could end up just constantly getting the same ability over and over again. And I say you could constantly get the same augmented ability over and over again because this polishing effect is time limited. So once you polish a ring, you're going to end up having the hidden effect for 7 days, 9 if you have patron, plus the remainder of the current day. So basically on daily reset, it's going to end up taking 1 tick off of the total amount of hidden ability. So it's basically the same as you know, the torches that you can end up crafting from Leviathans. Okay, whatever. Basically, it just means that in order to end up having the augmented ability off of the ring, you have to continuously grind over and over again so that you can end up gaining the items that are required in order to polish the rings. However, this right here is where it all falls flat on its butt, and I have to just say, if devs, if you're watching, shame on you, because most of these abilities suck. Certain classes will have god tier abilities, while the majority of them are actually really, really bad. Shadowhunter, for example, my boy, you know, I want to have an excuse to end up using a Shadowhunter, but I'm not going to go into all of these augmented abilities because we can talk about it in another video. But just to put it into perspective, here's the 3 different abilities that you could potentially end up getting on a crystal ring for the Shadowhunter. There's sneaky traps, where when dodging with the Shadowhunter, you'll actually drop a sun snare, which is the same snare that ends up trapping enemies, your #1 ability. Okay, that's not bad. How does it end up actually helping my Shadowhunter in terms of dealing damage and fighting dungeons faster? It doesn't. Okay, whatever, moving on. So, or there's Tactical Shot, where using a fully charged Radiant Arrow, which is your right-click ability, increases damage temporarily. That increased damage is minuscule, and that ability is extremely unreliable and also not fun. So absolutely useless ability. There's also Unholy Heal. So when enemies with Shadow Mark are defeated, the Shadowhunter is healed a small amount. Once again, a useless ability, because healing is something that the devs seem to think is a very, very valued asset in the game, despite the fact that they don't seem to realize every single character in the game is built towards DPS, or damage per second, which means that you have no health on your characters. You don't. Versus, let's say, let's look at, you know, Gunslinger. Gunslinger's abilities are basically you get increased attack damage, attack speed with your ultimate ability. Okay, that already just makes the Gunslinger stronger. Or there's Dodging, gives an instant charge shot. Again, makes the character stronger. or there's charge shot attacks have a chance to stun. That one's pretty useless. But the point is that 2 out of 3 of those abilities are actually god tier for the gunslinger, whereas one of the abilities is useful on the shadow hunter. And that's where I have a really big problem, is with all of the abilities being generally useless. Most of them are just really, really bad. On top of all of that, here's my 2 biggest problems with this. My first argument is, do we even need these? The answer is no. The only reason that any of these abilities, or any augmented damage abilities, I should be clear about that, would end up being useful is in the delves, because frankly speaking, we can already handle everything else in the game. And even in the delves, it doesn't really matter, because you can end up getting a random generated effect on the enemies that will ultimately be just, I don't know, just make them invincible to you. So it doesn't really matter. There's no real end game, so most of these abilities kind of suck. However, here's the biggest problem, is in order to end up getting like the polish and the rings and so on and so forth, as mentioned before, you have to get a prime Paragon level. And as you end up going further and further into the Paragon levels, it perpetually takes longer and longer to get that prime Paragon level. Now, here's the thing. I don't know whether or not the amount of experience points changes each Paragon level. It shouldn't, because that's what most Paragon levels do in other games, is it should be a set amount of XP, no matter how many times you end up leveling up. It should be the same amount of XP from Paragon level 1 to 2 as it is from 999 to 1000, okay? But honestly, I doubt that that's going to end up being the case. I'm just saying hopefully it is. I don't know, because I don't have Paragon level 2, because it takes 3 million XP in order to end up getting 1 Paragon level. And I got roughly 7,000 XP from doing a 2-star dungeon. So if we actually do like a calculation of that, that's 3 million divided by 7,000, which means I have to complete 428 1-star dungeons in order to get a single Paragon level. Devs, are you stupid? Like, come on, dude. Do they even calculate this? Like 500? Oh my god. So on top of all of that, in the patch notes, it says that the amount of XP that you get right now on the test server, like basically Paragon levels are going to end up being even harder to obtain once this update goes to the live server. And then on top of that, as mentioned before, you're going to have to continuously grind this Paragon level in order to end up getting the resources to craft more rings, to polish your rings, so on and so forth, which means that I'm literally going to be punished by having a higher Paragon level, because it means that it's going to take me longer and longer to reach those prime numbers. So it's going to be harder and harder for me to end up polishing these rings, which once again, the prime argument is, are these rings even useful? And the answer is no, because there's no end game. That's the problem that the devs are facing right now. And the argument that I and a lot of other players would say to the devs is, stop adding content like this. Start adding a reason for content like this to exist. Okay? Because another thing too that they ended up mentioning in the patch notes, which we'll go into that in detail in another video, but they basically make it so that Bomber Royale no longer ends up giving you XP. I understand where they're going with this, okay? Because they basically don't want Bomber Royale to be the best amount of XP that you can farm in the game. However, here's the thing, idiots. Make it like, I'm sorry, okay? The point is that I really detest and despise, and it pisses me off, the way that these developers are handling progress in this game. Because if I was in charge, here's my option. How about, instead of removing XP from Bomber Royale, you just make some other venue in the game give better XP? Because then people actually have incentive to do it, rather than, oh, it's just not an option. You know? And that's kind of the entirety of this update and why it just has me so frustrated. And I'm sorry that maybe I sound a little too hostile. And in the odd chance that the devs are watching this video, I'm sorry, I don't mean to sound so mean to you guys. But seriously, who okayed this? Who thought this was okay? Who thought this was a good idea? It sure as heck wasn't the community. It sure as heck wasn't people that are actually continuously playing this game for years and years on end. This is a decision of a developer which clearly doesn't actually even try playing the game for more than 10 minutes. Okay, because the amount of time that you would have to dedicate to these things, we've already seen this in a lot of the events that have been added to the game, where it wants you to grind like 5 hours worth to get one of the worst costumes in the entire game. It's 5 hours that, you know, a developer didn't test. They just coded in the number without actually realizing how long it would take, and how the average player doesn't care about any of this. That's the problem. Even somebody like myself who's at the end game, I don't care about any of this. Like, I think that, you know, good attempt, do better. And it just frustrates me, because I've talked about this over years, where Trove needed to have Paragon levels, but the Paragon levels that I'm talking about Trove having were more simplified and were actually the same as Diablo 3. I don't like how the fact that they keep on adding all of these elements from other games, but they make them worse and do their weird Trove way of doing things. And then on top of that, they add some stupid math equation where you have to Google what prime numbers are, specifically so that you know what levels you end up getting the prime loops are and stuff like that. And it's only for specific characters, and most of the abilities on the characters is absolutely useless. So basically, this just pigeonholes players into maining characters that they might otherwise not want to main. Because there's no incentive to main Shadowhunter, for example, my favorite class in the game, and a lot of other people's favorite class in the game. There's no incentive to main it because it's too weak. And these modified abilities just make other characters stronger, which means there's a positive incentive to play these other characters versus the character that you enjoy. Anyways, I'm sorry guys and gals, this was just supposed to be focused on a ranty video, and I was honestly surprised to see that they ended up implementing this. My buddy Nintendo ended up letting me know, hey, they got Paragon levels on Trove test server, check it out. I got really excited because I thought it was going to be infinite levels in Trove. I didn't know it was going to end up being this crap where it's just more wings and mounts that look disgusting, like this right here, that nobody actually wants or asked for. Like, if these mounts and items are going to end up being locked behind such a hugely difficult, you know, bump, make it so that they're the same as Troves of Wonder. Like, this should be a Gonda. This should create blocks as you end up going out into the world. Then people would have a lot more incentive to actually grind this. Some of the allies being some of the strongest allies in the game, okay, cool, but not really that cool, because once again, we're already strong enough to handle the end game anyways. And unfortunately, one of the things that I'm really worried about is that by me even opening up and talking about my frustration with this update, with the way that the developers end up nerfing things rather than buffing things, where they don't give us incentive, I'm worried that they might end up taking my criticisms to heart. I doubt that they will, but my idea would be that they would more than likely make the end game more difficult, so that then you end up having incentive to get these rings and get these new items, rather than adding a new layer of difficulty. They'll probably just modify the existing difficulty. But anyways, now this is just theory crafting and junk like that, and theorize and blah blah blah. Either way, I'm extremely disappointed with this. Obviously, as far as I'm concerned, when I'm playing and this update goes live, I think that it's going to be wasted potential. And that's why it's so frustrating, because I think that they have a great idea here. Just the execution is terrible. And I don't know whether or not they're going to end up fixing it before it goes live. I really hope that they do. I hope that they make the mounts and items out of this actually worthwhile. Like, either it has to be some of the most powerful mounts and allies in the game so that there's actually a reason to craft them, or they have to be the coolest mounts in the game. And this is arguably one of the laziest mounts in the game. Like, it looks stupid. Okay, it's just a purple and green and weird gold. Like, it's just a not Gonda. Like, it looks terrible. On top of that, the extreme rarity of these items, like, I could understand if they're supposed to be some coveted items, but even that, in that regard, they're just not. And then on top of it, there's just the crap show of the crystal rings, which... Thanks for watching, guys. If you disagree with me, you can always sound off in the comments and let me know. I hope that I ended up explaining this in a way that, you know, didn't sound too overly critical and was something that represents your guys' opinions as well. But if not, let me know, because honestly, like I said, to take away from the overall negative tone of this video, I do think that it's a great idea. I'm not against them adding the crystal rings and the modified abilities. It's just, if they're going to end up having a modified ability for the gunslinger that ends up increasing damage, they need to do something like that for the other characters so that they end up becoming more useful. And then on top of that, make it less random. There's too much randomness in this game, or as we've called it over the years, ran-dumb, because that's Trove in a nutshell. It's just RNG on RNG on RNG. And on top of all of that, like, let's just, let's not ignore the elephant in the room, that they actually want you to pay for these pinatas. They're trying to make Paragon levels pay to win. They're trying to end up making these rings pay to win. Like, are you kidding me? It's so stupid. Anyways, I don't mean to ramble more than I need to, but it seems that I did. Either way, I just needed to end up doing some stress relief. We'll still end up streaming and trying all of this out. Maybe not necessarily today, because I kind of want to experiment and try it out for myself, but we'll see. Either way, this was a negative video. I perfectly acknowledge that. Very frustrated, just because it's like, Trove is always of the mind of 1 step forward, 2 steps back. And this is 1 step forward, 5 steps back, because it doesn't add anything to the game to end up adding these crystal gems. And on the contrary, it feels like you're actually being punished for being at the end game. But anyways, try better, devs. Do something better than this. Actually, you know what? How about you put up a poll and actually get feedback from players? Or, I don't know. Just let us design the game, give us the idea of, oh, here's a modified ability that you could end up having, put it up to a vote or something so that the community actually feels involved. Because otherwise, when you do updates like this that are the complete opposite of what the players actually want, it breaks their trust and it makes us frustrated. Either way, thanks for watching. Smash like, sub for more, buy the merch you want to support the channel, and have yourselves a wonderful day, gamers.